Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we recap day 2 of the 2022 NFL Draft, and it was another wild one for the Eagles. We'll get into it coming up next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My head has been absolutely spinning the last 2 days because of the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Louie DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're recapping the Eagles' 51st overall selection in round 2 today and pick 83. And Gino, let me just tell you, I did not expect either one, maybe one player I expected to be on the board, but not after hearing some news about his medicals. He falls to pick 83. This was just a complete whirlwind of a day, just like yesterday was. The Eagles at pick 51, they go with a center from Nebraska and Cam Jurgens. And then at pick 83, Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean is still on the board because of a knee and shoulder injury that some people think is going to make him redshirt the entire 2022 season. And the Eagles say, we're going to bank on this being the next Landon Dickerson, not the next Sidney Jones. And suddenly, for the second day in a row, I feel like the Eagles are the talk of the draft again, or at least one of the top teams in that discussion.
They absolutely are. And I think, once again, it's evident, Lou, that this team will not draft for need. They just will not do it. They will set up their roster for the future. They are a proactive team in this part of the year. And for need, I could see them going out after and still signing Tyrann Mathieu at the safety position, signing one of those veteran cornerbacks as well. Because look, Jordan Davis is going to go into a position where you also have Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, who will potentially probably take over for the both of them. But he's going to be in the mix right away with them, and he's probably not going to play as many snaps as he will in the future. Cam Jurgens more than likely won't play until Jason Kelce is retired, which will most likely be next year, I would assume. And then Nakobe Dean, I mean, with his medicals, he might have to sit out the whole year. We still have to figure out exactly what it is. Right now it's reported that it's a pec/shoulder and potentially
and a meniscus in the knee.
Which meniscus, it doesn't take that long. Like I've known several people with meniscus injuries, and that seems to go pretty quickly. But the pec thing, yeah, that's definitely one of the things that it is a question mark. But really, did you just land arguably the second best or the best linebacker in this class at pick 83?
Right. Like, and Gino, that's the thing is I didn't know about the injuries. So when we were talking live about what they could do in round 2, we talked about Andrew Booth, Tariq Woolen, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Petrie. Nakobe Dean was a player on that list. He was number 3 heading into today. The third player I wanted the most, only ahead of him was Brisker and Booth. But then when you hear about the meniscus and the pectoral combined, you understand why he's falling down the board. And so you do recognize the risk, especially the Eagles who went through this with 2 players, one that spurned them in Sidney Jones in 2017. But at pick 83, the value with a position of need, potentially long-term, heading into 2022 and 2023. We don't know if Kazir White will be a long-term piece here, Davian Taylor as well. To get the potential most talented linebacker or the second most talented linebacker in this class that far down the board, like PFF had him as the highest ranked Power 5 linebacker since 2017. I understand why you take the risk. When it comes to the center pick with Jurgens, we talked about it on the live show. I know you never force a need, but I also don't think sometimes you don't force a certain philosophy and a certain position just because that's what you do. And with that pick, I really like the pieces you already had on the offensive line. I trust Jeff Stoutland. I don't know when Jason Kelce is going to retire, so I would have preferred other players. But overall today, just another interesting day from this football team, as always.
Well, if you needed a seal of approval, Jason Kelce was live on the Bleacher Report draft show with Adam Lefkoe, and he said that the last couple of years he has been part of studying centers and giving his evaluations to the personnel department. And he said in the past 2 to 3 years, this is from Jason Kelce's mouth, that Cam Jurgens is his favorite player. And if there was one player that mirrors him identically, that it's Cam Jurgens. and you turn on the tape and it's the exact type of player. And I don't ever want to get into that predicament where you don't have the next in line at a position where, yeah, they've had the luxury of having Jason Kelce there.
But what
for
about
now
positions that you don't have anything in line? Like, are we just going to ignore corner and safety and just keep throwing Band-Aids every single draft and like always make sure our lines are set? Like, is there 1 year we can take and address those spots?
I get it. I totally do. I want safety more than anybody. That, the Chargers, they have JT Woods, Nasir Adderley, Derwin James, and now with the Ravens having Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, Honey Badger really probably has to be the move. I don't see anything.
Right.
else.
They have to be confident or else you can't go into this with Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps, dude. You can't do it.
No, you're preaching to the choir here. Corner, I think you can get away a little bit because you have 2 of the 3 positions really filled right now, also with a young stable, with the ability to go out, and we always bring up the name Xavier Rhodes, who played for Jonathan Gannon in his system, would be a 1-year guy to just bring in. But I'm with you. I want high-profile talent at those positions. But you said it, and we said it on the live draft show. If you're walking down the street in New York City and somebody bumps into you, usually just like keep going on your way. When the Eagles draft offensive linemen on day 2, I just keep going on my way because it's such a Philadelphia Eagles selection. Like, we weren't shocked at the pick. Would we
all three moves
elsewhere?
they made to start,
Absolutely.
Like an interior defensive lineman, using a 1 on a wide receiver, and then spending a day 2 pick on an interior offensive lineman is just what this football team does. And again, like, I do get parts of it for sure. If Jason Kelce's retiring, if you don't want to move multiple players at different positions on the offensive line, if you want to keep Landon Dickerson at left guard, if you want to keep Isaac Seumalo at right guard, or Nate Herbig at right guard, or heck, even Jack Driscoll, and you want to keep that cohesive unit 4 spots entrenched and just have Kelce being replaced by 1 guy in Cam Jurgens, like, I do understand that. And Kelce's ringing endorsement makes me feel a lot better for sure. He said that Jurgens reminds himself of himself more than any prospect coming into the draft. So this could be a really good football player like Landon Dickerson was last year. So I do understand that logic. But again, for me, it's like eventually you do have to address other important areas of this football team when you have young, long-term pieces on the offensive line and you do have multiple players that could play center. And again, what if Jason Kelce comes to you next year and says, I don't want to retire this year either, and keeps pulling a Jason Peters and running it back? I'm not trying to rush Jason Kelce out the door for Cam Jurgens. So, I just think there needs to be 1 year, and I was hoping it would be this year, that they say, we're going to focus on these positions we normally don't take high. And yeah, you don't force a need like you said, but I think there were players on the board in the second round that were worth it. And they didn't do it, and this is what they do, so I've come to accept it. But at the same time, I will say the Nakobe Dean pick, though, makes me feel a little bit better because he was one of those players I wanted in the second round.
I totally agree with you, and I think there's still a lot of talent at the cornerback position. I think a couple have gone that I didn't expect. And
Tariq Woolen's still on the board, I think.
Yeah, he is. There's still guys, and there's depth in this class. Guys like Jalen Armour Davis are still available.
Kobe Bryant's still available.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant is still out there. The Eagles, when do they pick next? 154, if I'm not mistaken. Do they only have 2 picks left?
Well, yeah, because they traded 2 fourths and a 5 for in the Jordan Davis deal. They moved the 3 for AJ Brown.
So they gave up 5 picks, so they had 10.
Yeah.
Oof. Now that you added Jurgens, Lou, I think a lot of people that I have seen on Twitter are saying, like, oh, you have Nate Herbig there, you have a lot of other options, like, but none of them are like overly confident in being like long-term starters. So why not take a risk there? Or you just, now that you have Nate Herbig under this cost control deal with Andre Dillard as well, that's where you might try to accumulate more picks and hopefully try and move those guys for at least something. I can't see this team coming out of this draft with just 5 selections, but what they've done so far, adding in what they got out of pick, 18 and 103 for AJ Brown, I am more than okay with the direction that they have gone. Where there are some positions that I would have said, yeah, let's go take that guy 100%. Definitely secondary. But we said with linebacker, it almost kind of does play a lot of the similar styles and areas on the field that a safety would. Doesn't
well,
have
especially somebody like Nakobe Dean that can
Yes.
go sideline to sideline, somebody that instinctive. This, again, was worth the risk because talent-wise, and I know he's undersized, but sometimes you just got to let the film do the talking, and Dean is such a natural at what you need at this position. And again, Gino, you're not completely screwed either way if he doesn't pan out, because I think between Nakobe Dean, Kazir White, and Davian Taylor, you're going to get at least one of those guys panning out as a long-term piece, and probably at least two of them. So you're kind of in on three guys, and I feel good that a couple of them will pan out. So I do understand it there.
I believe that Jordan Davis is a surefire hit, and I was okay giving up whatever you gave to go and get him, and AJ Brown what you gave to go up and get him as well. And taking the risk at Nakobe Dean and having Cam Jurgens, who is more than likely the next in line at the center.
It's a clear long-term core
draft,
because when you look at 2022, I don't know, like you said, I mean, Jordan Davis behind Cox and Hargrave, Jurgens going to be behind Kelce. You've got Nakobe Dean maybe not even playing this year. This was clearly how we talked about building, and that clearly was the theme of this draft so far is the long-term.
And without giving up any 2023 picks either. So they probably value that class a lot higher than they do this current class. So that's another thing. Like with the 5 selections, were they okay making sure they got 2 or 3 of their guaranteed players so they know in 2023 they'll have more optionality, which I think was a big intent of moving out of that 3rd selection that this Eagles team had, because maybe the NFL is right with this class. Like we kind of overrated the quarterbacks a little bit. I mean, there's guys falling
Malik
down the board.
Willis just went, man, by the way. He went to the Tennessee Titans finally. Where did Corral go?
Carolina.
Yeah, I figured that's where he was going to go.
That's a better pick than Kenny Pickett for that.
Gino, I thought about that too, by the way, the other day. It's like in this class, especially when you're not sure about the talent level at some positions, the Eagles were probably going to stick with what they know best, and that is linemen, and then maybe address other things down the road for sure. But it was a super interesting day going with Cam Jurgens at 51 and Nakobe Dean at 83. We'll continue to get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. But guys, first a shout out to one of our sponsors. It's Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair, and they're going to send you a brand new pair if you lose them no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that, plus 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays exclusively for our Locked On Eagles listeners. Head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code Locked On to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's promo code Locked On for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. All right, Eagles fans, Louie DiBiase, Gino Camilleri joining you on this Friday edition of the show, recapping day 2 for the Eagles in the 2022 NFL Draft, sitting tight at pick 51, taking Nebraska center Cam Jurgens, and then selecting at 83, Nakobe Dean, the Georgia linebacker that, Gino, some people had the Eagles taking in round 1 in mock drafts, but because of a pectoral injury, a meniscus injury, he might be redshirted this year. There are some real injury concerns that plummet him all the way down the board to pick 83. And again, it was risky, but I think the value was there. And so just what an interesting draft so far, man. I mean, you go Jordan Davis, you trade for AJ Brown, you take Cam Jurgens, you go with Nakobe Dean. I mean, again, long-term is the theme of this.
That's the only way to look at it. And you have to look at it in that positive lens as well, because, yeah, we know that there were a lot of holes. And if you force a pick, and that's what you have to look at, if you force a selection on a player at a position of need that you might not truly like, you end up with Danny Watkins. Let's just remember that. Like, I get the idea of taking football players in the secondary. Trust me, I've shouted it from the rafters for years, right? But if that board said that Cam Jurgens was that much higher than everybody else, you have to make that pick. Like that's
right. And if that's why, then okay. But
yes.
I doubt it though.
I don't know. I mean, with
I
all
think
the
positional value has a lot to do with it. They
Yes.
value that so much.
They definitely do value that. And I think that they might be a little more confident in what they have in the building in the secondary than you and I are, which
Well, then they're insane, man.
God bless
I'm sorry,
them.
but
Yeah, God
I
bless them
agree.
if so. But I don't think they'll be done in terms of free agency either. I don't think that they'll be done taking those guys tomorrow. I mean, they have 2 selections. If they walk out of there without taking a defensive back, what other position would it be? I mean, I can't see them taking, now that they've taken linebacker, now that they've taken interior defensive lineman, they traded for a wide receiver, they took their offensive
Tight
lineman.
end, maybe running back.
Yeah, I mean, it's between tight end and defensive back for me. Like, there's no other picks that I'm making. And you wait for the running back class to kind of play out, see who you can get in the undrafted department, probably pick up some more defensive guys in the secondary in undrafted free agency as well. But you're really banking on the development that you have in that building based on what the events that have taken place here in the past 24 hours or so. Because they didn't take one of those guys. They didn't trade up to get Derek Stingley or Sauce Gardner. They didn't draft Andrew Booth where he was probably going to be valued due to his medicals. But sometimes missing out on that allows opportunities like Nakobe Dean. Like, you kind of just fell into this player who, even if he's not on the field next year, Lou, you got Kaiser White, who will be more than a capable starter. You could still see what you have in Davian Taylor without really having to take him off the field. And then, they do like TJ Edwards in that run-stopping role for them. If Nakobe Dean is out next season, it's not really the worst thing in the world. And you could let him come back healthy if Davian does well, and you could let Kaiser White walk, or you sign him to an extension. The optionality is there now. And you got a guy 20 picks ahead of where you took Davion, who has 2 levels of better round talent than Davian did. So think of it like
That's
that.
The thing. Like, they're both 3rd-round picks, but Nakobe Dean, if he doesn't have the injuries, you can say what you want about the size, but he's still a 1st or 2nd-round player.
Yep.
He's probably a day 1 pick over Kay Walker and maybe even over Devin Lloyd, depending on the order for sure. So, again, though, it's just defensive back. I'm very concerned about that. And again, it's not just like forcing a short-term need. Like, I'm not saying if they just needed a safety right now, but they had some long-term pieces that they liked, that's not it. It's also the long-term, man. Like, they don't have a safety beyond 2022 that I'm confident is going to be a main piece. At cornerback too, you got a slot corner long-term in Avonte Maddox. Darius Slay, to me, isn't going anywhere within the next few years, but there's a gaping hole there on that second outside corner spot.
Maybe they love Zach
short-term
McPherson.
and long-term. Maybe. Or maybe they just, again, are prioritizing. The way the board fell, the opportunities that presented themselves, the positions they value more. Not to say they don't value corner, but it's probably a combination of all of those things. I'm just concerned with the spot they're in. And so you got free agency like Honey Badger. Hopefully that happens. Jaquiski Tartt still out there at safety. I think is Patrick Peterson's. I don't think Patrick Peterson is signed. Maybe you go for, again, maybe that kind of move like you did with Steven Nelson last year. So, but they've got to do something because maybe they like Zach McPherson, but I just can't imagine you go in with him as your next CB2. So, but how he's talked about in the past, not having every hole be filled before the draft. And they've, shown that in the past where they can address things in the summer and still get good players. So again, this book isn't finished on the 2022 offseason, but for now, I'm definitely concerned.
Well, the Washington Commanders just took Brian Robinson Jr., who Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis know very fondly.
By the way, isn't that awesome, interesting? The Dean-Davis combo,
Yes, that's another element that I think we need to talk about as well, is that cohesiveness. Those two know how to play off of each other, and now you're going to have that.
And they're going to directly feed off each other, Gino. They go hand in hand.
And whenever Nakobe steps on the field, I don't know if that's going to be in 2022 or 2023, but the second he gets his shoulder on a tight end or a running back coming across the middle in Lincoln Financial Field, we're going to forget about any medical issues that this guy had, because he is exactly what you look for in a game-changing linebacker. And there was reasons he was being talked about in the first round. The medicals are another thing. We don't know fully the understanding of everything involved with it. But looking at your scheme, looking at the fit, looking at the talent, where Sidney Jones a couple years ago might be like square peg round hole based on Jim Schwartz and what he really liked to do, Nakobe Dean is a an absolutely perfect fit for Jonathan Gannon's scheme. If you think about what Darius Leonard did for Indianapolis there when Jonathan Gannon was there, think about the same exact role. Somebody who's not only going to be able to come down and stop the run, but if you got a guy going out to the sideline on the perimeter, he's probably going to be one of the first two players there. Next to a Jordan Davis who could run 4.7 from the interior gaps, which is frightening.
100%, man. The Philadelphia Eagles, they go with Cam Jurgens, the Nebraska center, at pick 51, and then Nakobe Dean, the Georgia linebacker, at 83 in round 3. Gino and I, we will take a look at what's to come on day 3, coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Built Bar, easily the best tasting protein bar on the planet. It's a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. It's all of the flavor and none of the guilt, covered in 100% chocolate. It's soft, it's easy to chew, but it's way healthier than your guilty pleasure, that sweet tooth, whatever the craving is, a Hershey's bar, Reese's cup, whatever it is, replace it with a Built Bar, which only has 130 calories in most bars, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Head over to Built.com today. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order of whatever the go-to flavor is. Banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate. You've got the marshmallow puff bars right now too, with cinnamon churro, banana cream pie flavors. Trust me, go check out all of your options at Built.com. And again, use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Eagles fans, thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louie DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri, recapping the Eagles selections of Cam Jurgens, the Nebraska center, in round 2 at pick 51, and then in round 3 at pick 83, it is Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean. So the Eagles have now addressed their long-term unicorn defensive tackle, Jordan Davis. They got their maybe Macklin to your Deshaun to Macklin, whatever. It doesn't compare style-wise, but you've got your top 2 receivers now after trading for A.J. Brown, trading the 18th pick in 101 to pair with Devontae Smith. You take Jurgens, you take Nakobe Dean. Gino, what's next for you tomorrow with a limited, chest of picks compared to what you had because of these moves? You went for a lot of quality, and I totally understand it. But what do you want tomorrow, do you think, with the later picks that, again, some more casual fans kind of turn off the TV tomorrow, but the Eagles have made their money with a lot of their core over the years on day 3 of the draft?
Well, first off, they don't pick until the 5th round, so we will have to wait a little bit, and I could see them even trading down a little bit in the 5th round to accumulate maybe 1 to 2 more picks, because they don't pick again until the 7th round. But what I'm expecting is tight end, defensive backs. And I'm excited to see what Howie Roseman has to say when they do. I'm pretty sure they do a press conference after each day, so we should hear his remarks on the day 2 picks and what they were thinking of at those selections. So I'll be intrigued to see what other positions he mentioned that they were looking at. Don't know how much detail he gets into it, but you would have to believe that they're done with the trenches. I don't think that they're going to add anything else there. I don't think they add another wide receiver unless somebody is way too good on the board, like Kelvin Austin and his return ability. I'd be more than okay with
maybe Bo Melton from Rutgers.
Yeah, like if they pick that, either of those two with that 5th round pick,
if it has to do with returning, I understand it. Yeah, as long as you're taking a guy like that, maybe even Danny Gray. He's got some crazy long-term speed from SMU. I would get, but I'm with you, man. I think it's got to be DB at this point. And running back, tight end, just round out the depth, and take some chances too. I think still take risks like you did with Jordan Mailata a few years ago, Josh Sweat a few years ago. You've done really well in rounds 4 through 7 and in the undrafted pool,
that's where they're going to have to make their money.
Yeah, it's going to be thinner this year, I think. compared to other years with a weaker draft class overall. But they've shown they can get contributors every year from this spot when it's normally a lot more difficult. It's funny with the Eagles, man. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this year it's going to be that way, and it wasn't last year, but a lot of the times they do better on day 3 than day 1.
And I would expect potentially the trade of Jalen Reagor, potentially a Nate Herbig.
Yeah, he deleted all his social media accounts, man. He's not handling the A.J. Brown trade pretty well.
No, not at all, and not like you should and when you're in that position. But the Eagles should put a lot of time into that undrafted free agent pool. And they're usually one of the teams that shells out a lot of guaranteed money to like one or two favorite players that they sign in that undrafted free agent pool. And maybe they see a large conglomeration of players in that area where they're saying, okay, like maybe the top part of the draft wasn't as good as we thought, but we have a chance to do better in that area. I'll be excited to see what they do in terms of moving back to get more picks, because I don't think they walk away with just 5 picks for yet another year. I mean, that would be what? The third time they've had 5 picks in the last 5 or 6 drafts. I just can't see that happening. I cannot see it happening. But I know they went quality over quantity. But the one thing that they didn't give up, Lou, 2023 assets. Because
right, they didn't give up like quantity in future drafts when the classes are going to be better.
And you had to go into this year with optionality, and you always have to go into it not really panicking and not having to say, okay, we have to fill this now. Howie Roseman says it year over year. You can't fix everything in one draft. And we knew that after 2017 and after those core pieces started to go away, that, it's probably going to be more of a rebuild than we had expected. Yeah, they got some Band-Aid signings that allowed them to go to a couple playoff appearances. Last year kind of showed that after taking away those Band-Aids, they can heal that wound by drafting a little bit better. And maybe those draft picks don't impact you year 1, but if they're going to be the foundation of your organization and potential pillars of your organization, and you believe firmly in that, it's worth whatever pick you're going to give up to go and do that. And that's why I stand behind it until I see the result on the field, especially with a guy like Nakobe Dean. Like, right now it's okay that we picked him, but hey, if he does redshirt, something goes wrong with the medical, it could be an absolute disaster of the pick. But on the other end, you might hit a home freaking run with this guy. You might have your center of the future for the next decade. You might have your 2-gap, 1.5 gap, can do anything, line up on the edge, defensive lineman who is a once-in-a-generation type of unicorn in terms of what he can do. Go and do it. Oh, and you just added A.J. Brown, who's 24 years old with 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons. So
that's the thing, man. Like, let's just remove position talk at all from this equation. The pure talent the Eagles have added the last 2 days, with what Jordan Davis could be, with what A.J. Brown is, with what even Cam Jurgens could be at a position. Again, removing position, the potential he has, the upside, what Nakobe Dean could be. Again, he's not the safety or corner we wanted, but we really wanted just a second-level player that can move sideline to sideline and wear a lot of hats. That was Dean at Georgia. They did add a lot of talent over the last, and again, removing position, removing potential immediate roles. There's a lot of things that go into this conversation that could have you feeling certain ways about the picks. But I think overall, though, a lot of long-term talent was added the last 2 days. And that definitely is an exciting part of this. And it's going to continue tomorrow. We've got you covered right here on Locked On Eagles. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. A ton of content still all throughout the draft as we wrap up day 3 tomorrow. And then Gino will take a final look. I shouldn't say a final look, but a big overall recap throughout next week of this draft class. And can't wait to get it going again.
Yeah, we still have tomorrow. I mean, there's a chance that they could just make 2 selections and we walk away with 5 picks, or Trader Howie continues to be in the spirit of what he loves to do and make some moves tomorrow that we don't expect. And I wouldn't be shocked at all, but it's going to be fast and crazy tomorrow. Arguably my favorite day of the draft every single year. Just pick. Rooting for a couple CGS guys to get drafted tomorrow. And we're just going to hope that the Philadelphia Eagles come out with a better team at the end of all of this. And Kyle Brandt on the NFL Network today said a great quote that I wanted to say on this show. What teams can guarantee that they added a great player to their roster yesterday?
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Eagles, potentially Hollywood Brown and the Arizona Cardinals, and the rest of them are unproven assets. So right now, the Eagles have gotten much better. They're going to be in a better position to compete in this division, in this conference. And at the end of the day, they're building for the long term while at the same time supporting the short-term goals.
All right, Gino, we'll be back on Monday for another edition of Locked On Eagles. But again, we got content for you tomorrow on Twitter and on YouTube. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're signing off for now. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.